California tends to have, at least in the last half century, Republican governors and Democratic constitutional officers in every other seat, notably lieutenant governors. So you've always had this friction between the lieutenant governor's office and the governor's office, particularly in 4 key areas, because the lieutenant governor serves as chair of the State Lands Commission. So if you care about offshore oil drilling, onshore oil drilling, mineral extraction, you care about rivers, lakes, streams, you care about anything happening 3 miles off the coast, the chair of the State Lands Commission will have some influence. You sit on the UC Board of Regents, CSU Board of Trustees. You sit and serve as the chair of the Economic Development Commission, and perhaps more than anything else, I think that's the impetus for the invitation today, is my responsibility and role to focus on jobs and the economy, a role, candidly, that this state has not advanced in any significant way, nor has previous folks in the lieutenant governor's office. It's not a critique, and there's a reason for that. It's an observation. And so those are the roles of the lieutenant governor. Those are roles that I'm actively participating in. And then I'm trying to assert myself in things like the high-speed rail and other things where I don't have a formal role, but I feel like I have something to offer.
Great. Thank you. I just got to say, you are the favorite politician in the Reichert household, because when you were mayor, you came and you visited Charles Armstrong's school, which is where my youngest was at that point in time. And so that was a shout out to Charles Armstrong and a shout out to you for supporting Charles Armstrong. And
for what I say, you're probably going, what the heck are they talking about? I suffered or struggled or was challenged by learning disability, and Charles Armstrong is one of the great schools in terms of reconciling dyslexia in particular as well, but dominantly dyslexia. And so, I won't be talking here about my Rhodes Scholarship or academic achievement, but nonetheless, those struggles are something I care deeply about, and God bless the good work down there.
They do. It's, again, a shout out to Charles Armstrong, a great school. But to the topic that a lot of people here are interested in, state of California, United States broadly, has been struggling the last couple of years. There's been a lot of challenges. I'd like to ask you, what makes you optimistic that we're going to be able to pull it out here in California and across the country?
Well, I mean, let's start here in California. I think fundamentally it's our strength and concentration of human capital, people. I mean, here we are in the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy, and I think by and large people are living together and prospering together across every conceivable and imaginable difference. I think when you look around the rest of the world, you have to sort of pause and reflect on that fact, that we celebrate all our wonderful and interesting differences, but at the end of the day, this is a state and a nation that by and large, again, not perfect, gets the fact that we're all interdependent. We're all bound together, as Dr. King said, by that web of mutuality. We're all in this together, and no greater demonstration of that than the Silicon Valley, the San Francisco Bay Area. And so I am fundamentally optimistic because of that, as long as we harness that and we don't just tolerate that diversity, but we celebrate it every single day. Because it comes from that, everything else comes from that, meaning it's from there that creativity and that innovative spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit, the notion that California has always been a state of dreamers and doers, always at its best, being on the leading and cutting edge. And so if we maintain that fundamental core value proposition, then I have every confidence we'll weather the storm, as we certainly are here in Silicon Valley at the moment, but we'll weather this broader storm, particularly in the macroeconomic sense in this state and in our country.
So let's talk a little bit about human capital and the intersection between the private sector and the public sector. So in your job as lieutenant governor and sort of participating in the state government, you're watching Silicon Valley. We're going through a relatively nice time here in Silicon Valley. We're trying to pump some more value into the economy here. We're trying to pump some more jobs.
Yeah.
Where do you see as the right intersection between what the state government should be doing about jobs, human capital, investing in innovation versus, that's the private sector, let's leave it to the guys in Silicon Valley?
Well, let me back up a little bit and answer the question as I get to the tail end of the answer. We don't have a jobs plan in California. Now, I'm a guy who started a few businesses, but one thing I knew is I wasn't going to raise a penny unless I had some general idea of what I wanted to accomplish. So I had to put pen to paper, and I put together a plan. I always said it was not a static plan. It's going to develop and dramatically evolve, but at least I have some idea. And then went out and marketed the idea of a small little wine store with one part-time employee and was able to raise $175,000. In California, there is no jobs plan. There hasn't been one for 2 decades. So there's no dashboard of California's economy. There's no place to go as well. You don't have an agency. So if you want to call the Economic Development Agency in the state of California, there are 36 phone numbers I will give you. If you want to create, I'm not kidding, there are 36 agencies that feel like they have a role to play in job creation, retention, and workforce development. So you got to begin there. We have got to put a plan together. We are working on that. And as I said, it wasn't a critique of the past. It just was never the focus because your question was an important one. Some people believe the role of government is to stay out of private sector's ways, not pick winners and losers, to create the conditions, those foundational conditions where that everything sort of takes shape. And I don't disagree with that, but we were so laissez-faire that we even got out of the business of trade a number of years ago. You'd think in California, of all places, with notably what's happened in Asia, not just in Shanghai and Beijing, but the Karnataka region of around Bangalore and all over parts of the world, that we would be front and center with a trade and commerce orientation. We got rid of our trade and commerce office in 2003. While all these other states were focused on building their manufacturing, now to some success, more failure, and framing their manufacturing and goods development in the context of an export strategy or a trading strategy. So we have got to get back in the business of job creation, which means we've got to put a plan together. We'll have that by the end of July. We have spent 6 months casing other people's joints, learning from every state, from Alabama to Louisiana, probably 2 states you didn't think much about, but we're thinking a lot about, to Texas, where I went out with a bunch of Republicans, got me in a lot of trouble because it was a bipartisan trip, me and 18 Republicans, bipartisan by California standards, and learning what's happening. And look, I mean, we've been really focused on Pennsylvania and Utah and Minnesota, Maryland with Martin O'Malley as governor is doing good work, the new governor of Colorado, John Hickenlooper is doing some great things, New York State with their new governor, Andrew Cuomo, and trying to be more aggressive. So we got McKinsey, when in doubt, hire McKinsey, or at least raise some money to hire them, as we did, and Brookings that are helping us put this plan together, Silicon Valley Leadership Group and others that are helping support this. And we'll have that draft out there. And then we've got to get in the how business. That's, again, that delivery system. It's one thing to have a plan. You all know this. You got to actually make it real. Nothing worse than having a plan and no one executes. So we got to get in the execution business in the context of at least getting into the implementation of that plan. And we have a bill to restructure the organization of organizational focus of economic and workforce development, because you can't have an economic development strategy without a workforce development strategy. We'll focus on cluster frameworks, regionalism. Not every region's the same. What's unique here in Silicon Valley in the high-tech, biotech, life science, nanotech, digital media, digital arts, and green tech doesn't necessarily translate per se in the Bakersfield area, or necessarily down in the southern part of the state. So each region, California is such a large state, has regional attributes. So we'll focus on regionalism. We won't pick winners and losers, but we'll align some intentionality around support with a toolkit of what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are. Why are we 43rd in the corporate tax rate in all these index analysis and 44th in income tax, but number 1 in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and number 3 in, or number 1 in venture capital as well, and number 3 in sort of innovation, dynamism, and sort of build on those strengths and start to reconcile those weaknesses, provide for the legislature and the governor a menu of options that they can choose from. Say, look, in Louisiana, they've gotten aggressive on manufacturing tax credits as one of dozens of examples. We're not going to say which ones the legislature should do. That's not my role. But here's the option, and let's have a debate about whether or not we can be more competitive in this frame. And then we're going to get back in the trade business. We're going to open up some offices without spending $1 of your money in China. I did this as mayor of San Francisco. We opened up offices in Shanghai, and then I just opened up, before I left, an office in Beijing. And we already have 13 headquartered companies, North American, California-based, San Francisco-based headquartered companies, because we went out there with some aggression and intentionality and brought back Yingli Solar and Suntech, the largest photovoltaic manufacturer in the world, arguably, and got some other companies to say, all right, start with 20, 30, 50 people. And we started getting back in the business of being aggressive and starting to recruit some folks. And so that's what the state needs to do, and that's what I'm arguing for.
Okay. Can you give us any more preview on the workforce development, jobs development, tax reform side of what you're planning, or what's on the table? Anything we're going to say, it's about time, or wow, that's amazing?
Well, it's a nice thing to say it's about time to at least have a damn plan. I hope you at least say that. I mean, the bar is that low. Mm-hmm. It's about time we recognize that it's not it is about, but it's not just about Canada, Mexico, and Japan, because those have been our trading partners historically that we focus most of our attention. It's about Brazil, it's about India, it's about Taiwan, it's about China, it's about these other countries. And I hope you go, wow, that's good that they're getting serious about that, and they're not spending my money doing it by building partnerships. I hope you'll say, boy, it's about time there's a 1-800-JOBS number, whatever your jobs number is, that someone's actually going to answer the phone and is being able to say, all right, that's what CEQA stands for. And are you kidding? That's how long it takes? And, well, I'm in this city. Can you tell me about who to talk to in that city? And there's some connectivity to the state. And, you do have tax incentives. Oh, you have workforce training incentives. Oh, you have I didn't know that. So some group, there's a retention strategy, which I hope you'll appreciate. Because 95% of the jobs that are created in the state of California, most states, when you look at all the analysis, last 2 decades, there was a great report came out, said 95% of all in-state jobs come from existing business growth, name it, from LinkedIn to Zynga to Twitter to Facebook to Skype. Just think of all the open recs, Google, as well as new startups. So you've got to create the entrepreneurial ecosystem to support new startups and to support existing businesses and their growth. Just 3% come from headquarter or smokestack recruitment. And it's interesting, we put most of our money and incentives, perversely, into trying to recruit headquarters, and so little in doing what 95% of the real work is in supporting existing job growth. So I hope you'll go, wow, that's a pretty obvious thing to do, but at least is a shift in policy as we shift away some of our recruitment dollars to our retention and development dollars. And then on the workforce alignment, it's self-evident to all of you. We have 26 counties. Now, I haven't done the analysis of the May numbers, but these were the April numbers, where we dropped to 11.9% unemployment. But you have 26 counties in this state with unemployment north of 15%. Wow. And you've got 7 counties with unemployment north of 20%. If you're in Imperial County or Colusa County or Sutter County or Madera County, unemployment's north of 24, 25, 26, 7%. These are Depression-era numbers. The new number, just got this today, 33.1% of Californians that are unemployed, and there are 2,143,000 people that are unemployed in this state. Interesting, by the way, the national job growth between 2000 and 2010 was 2.5 million. Just to put it in perspective, 1 decade of national job growth. And in California alone, we have over 2.1 million people unemployed. But of those unemployed, 33.1% have been unemployed more than a year. So now you have, to your question, a skills problem, because people are completely disconnected. 6 months is sort of the traditional red flag. That's over half. But 33% over a year, you got a skills problem. So you've got to align a workforce framework to deal with that skills gap, because the biggest problem right now with all of you is that skills gap. Because this high-tech boom is bigger, arguably, than ever, certainly from a P&L perspective. You're sitting on $181 billion, just the top 150 Silicon Valley public companies, sitting on that, uncommitted, and you want to start hiring, but you can't necessarily find all the folks. And so we've got to address that skills gap with a workforce alignment and a workforce strategy that aligns to what we're trying to accomplish, which is to support your growth and your job creation, which, by the way, last quarter was more than all of 2010 combined. I don't know who you talked to before. They may have shown you that numbers. 90,600 high-tech jobs in this last quarter were created. And that was more than 82,600 in all of 2010. That was just for the quarter. So high tech is taking off, and I know this just as the ex-mayor of San Francisco, because that whole South of Market area and what Twitter's doing and the cloud, and now with Mark Benioff and Salesforce, they're talking about as much as 2 million square feet in their new headquarters they're building out. This thing's taking off. Pincus and what he's doing at Zynga, Playdom, Playfish, all these companies. It's exciting, but we've got to make sure we support that workforce. These are not short answers. I'm sorry.
But they're good ones, right? So to the retention point, though, I mean, so all these companies here, as they grow, they get to the point where they say, okay, we're going national, we're going global. We're going to start, what the heck, let's do our manufacturing someplace else. Let's open some research and development someplace else. On the retention side, what can California do to keep more of the incremental growth here in the state?
Your question was perhaps more profound than you even believe in this context, that you linked something that is rarely linked. People have argued, and a lot of intellectual, liberal types like me, but not intellectual. That's where, again, my point of the dyslexia. Has sort of intellectualized, so if manufacturing is a passing phase of our economy. Between 2001 and 2010, you can argue 2009, depends on which studies, we lost about 1/3 of our manufacturing in the country. About 1/3 in California, too. We lost proportionately. It's about 11.5% of our GDP. Was 28% coming out of World War II. Put it in perspective. So they say it's just a passing phase. But you made the ominous point in connecting the two in your question, the R&D side. What people miss is what's happening, and you know this, some of you folks that are working for these bigger companies, as the manufacturing goes, so goes the R&D. 2/3 of R&D, upwards of 70%, again, depending on the study, of all the research and development that's done in this country is in the manufacturing frame, advanced manufacturing primarily. You start losing your manufacturing, as we have lost it, and you start losing it even more significantly, then you're putting the one competitive advantage, again, human capital and the capacity to out-innovate, R&D, at real peril and real risk. And that's where I think they're just dead wrong, those that would argue against manufacturing as a focused frame in any economic development strategy. I want manufacturing to be a big part of California's fate and future. Here's why. Not only on the R&D side, but for every 100 jobs or so you create in some of these facilities, you create about 1,000 jobs outside. You've got remarkable multipliers in the manufacturing realm because of all the small businesses that are being supported by what's being manufacturing down the road. So this, for me, is a small business strategy. It's certainly an export strategy. It's a strategy on R&D. And it's a strategy to reconcile the fact that in 2008, 1.2 billion cell phones were sold around the world, and not one was produced in the United States of America. And as someone that loves my iPhone, even though I broke it 3 times, they got some rap on that, obviously. I should have gone into the glass business. It's cost me $100 each time. It says right on the back something that really upsets me. And I'm the biggest Steve Jobs and fan in the world. I really am. But it says, and I'm proud of when I see design in California, I have pride, but then I see manufactured in China, and I sit there, what's wrong with us? Not with Steve, not with Apple, but what's wrong with California that we can't bring those manufacturing jobs back? With real incentives, try to level the playing field, try to deal with the fact that I talked about Colusa and Imperial counties. You have huge warehouse facilities, millions and millions and millions of square feet sitting there empty. We have the opportunity to reconcile that, but we have to have a jobs orientation and, again, intentionality, a focus to start bringing back manufacturing in the biggest manufacturing state in the nation. Don't forget that. There's still more manufacturing jobs here than any other state in the nation by the very scope and nature of the size of the state. We have got to get back in that business, and you support it through an export strategy. So this is, I'm very passionate about this from an R&D side, not just the job creation side, and I just want to start making things again.
Well, let's see if we can continue this profound streak. And
well, yeah, no, yeah, right. Sorry to set you the bar.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, but so roll back to where we started, which is education. Right?
Yeah.
And so, part of there's this general concern about the state of education in California. Obviously, everybody here highly depends upon talent coming out of the UC system or wherever we can get it to build out our companies. And then on the flip side, we're also seeing some of the greatest talent that's educated in California deciding, why stay? I can go back elsewhere.
Where do I start? You know, I was back in Washington, D.C. Let me criticize my own I don't know, there's reporters here. I should be careful.
No, that's okay.
But I ain't tweeting anything, so I'll be all right. So it's you're going to hear that punchline forever. I know. I'm sorry. So start. The H-1B visa issue is frustrating to me because there's the votes in Congress today to solve it. I mean, if you hear another damn politician that's an incumbent politician give that speech down here, throw something, you know, rhetorically at them. I mean, ask them why. What the hell is it about your current job that makes you incapable of addressing that issue? And you know what the real answer is? They won't give you the real answer. The real answer is my party, the Democrats, are linking that issue to the broader reform of immigration. They're using that, which they know is more popular, to address the issue of the 11+ million people that are here without documentation. Now, I get that from a strategic perspective. I'm not naive to how politics works. You have to use your best cards to leverage the broader reform because there is so much at stake. But what we've held out is as hostage an issue that tomorrow, if it came up for a vote, would have overwhelming support to address the issue of how we out-educate so we can out-compete, using President Obama's own words from the State of the Union. But they won't do it. I'm frustrated by that, and you should be outraged by that because you're the ones that are being hurt, and we are, all the rest of us that are not in your business, because residually we're not getting that talent because we're losing some of that talent. That can be dealt with today. Second, we have to reconcile this. Do not believe the headlines about 32% increases at the CSU and UC. That's not the problem. They missed the problem. It's amazing what the reporters missed at the last UC Board of Regents meeting and CSU board. We gave a presentation about the 4.5-year, $2.5 billion structural problem, just as one example at the UC system, that makes 32% pale in comparison. So everything's being held up in hostage right now, talking about hostage situations in this budget deal in Sacramento. And everyone's lamenting about if there's another $500 million of cuts of higher education. There's already been $500 million at the UC system, $500 million at the California State University system. If there's another $500 million each, $1 billion total, we'd be talking that 32% fee or tuition increases in both university systems. But they're not talking about even pushing that aside, what we're doing in the next few years to deal with this structural problem. Again, $2.5 billion at the UC system alone. This is so serious. Do not underestimate or undervalue the significance of that UC system and the CSU, for that matter, community college system, all 109 campuses, to the success of California. And there's no substantive dialogue, there really isn't, around how to deal with the structural problem. And that structural problem is not 20 years. Again, next 4 or 5 years. I say 4.5 because that's more precise. And we have got to reconcile. There's got to be a new funding mechanism for higher education in the state.
So what do you recommend? What should we do?
You got to get out. You got to get into the game. You got to get outraged. You got to get involved. You guys understand this. Is one thing about holding hands, having a candlelight vigil. None of you would be in this room if you believed in that kind of governance philosophy. Just hold, please, my competition. Oh, they're doing so well, but just stop doing so well. We're really great. Or no one. Here we are. We blame Bush. Now we can blame the current president. We blame Congress because now we just blame. We blame everybody else. Take no responsibility. You can't be in the blame game. You got to be in the do business, the how to do business, right? You got to. And so what we have to do, you got to get in this game because it's about your fate and your future. It's about this state's fate and future. And I don't know about you. I don't know if many of you want to move to Texas in August. Right. That's a little shot, but I mean, at Rick Perry. But it's not. I hope you kind of like it out here. And this is a red zone. This is past a red zone. This thing's bursting, and we need to have an honest conversation about how to fund it. Now I have 3 or 4 lousy ideas because you won't like any of them, because no one wants to pay for a damn thing. We're already paid too much in fees, fine, taxes. How many people have used a quarter and gotten 10 minutes as opposed to that quarter in the meter used to get 2 hours? You're taxed to death. You're sick and tired of it. But But how are you going to fund higher education? By doing what? Shutting down all the prisons? Which ones do you want to shut down, and where do you want those prisoners to go? That's fine. Tell me. I mean, I'm open to it. I mean, the governor is just running out of new ideas, or any ideas. But we are fundamentally on the brink of breaking this system down. It takes, you know this in business, it takes a year or two to destroy something that takes a generation to build. It goes that quickly. And you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people that will be denied a higher education. And now they're competing. That's not just, as Bobby Kennedy said, these are not just young folks. This is not a time of life. It's a state of mind. It's folks trying to get re-educated that have been out of the workforce for 52 weeks or more. And they need a place to go. And they need to be able to afford it. It's about your kids, especially some of the startups here, where you're not earning $7 million yet. You're barely earning $70,000, a family of 4. And I use that as a specific example because that's where you don't get the financial aid. And every one of these tuition increases is crushing. And so this is serious stuff. 1984, it didn't cost you a penny to go to these universities, the community colleges, not $1. Now it's $36 a unit, on its way to $68 a unit, potentially, a unit.
So that means, and you know, I know you probably don't want to say it publicly, but it's either Prop 13 or income tax or sales tax or more fees. Is that where you're going?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, what's the?
I don't know that we can keep increasing income tax for the top wage earners. I don't know you can keep increasing the corporate tax. I mean, we're already out of whack with the rest of the other states, and for that matter, internationally, though, it is unbelievable how many people don't pay those corporate taxes, so I don't know what the net effect is. It's just on the top line. I don't know that you can do that. So, sales tax, the most regressive tax, right? Every time you increase it, it hurts those on the bottom more than it does on the top. So what's left? Well, Prop 13, you brought it up. I didn't, for the record. But it certainly should be brought up.
It was profound.
At the same time, you got to look at user fees. You got to look structurally at job creation, right? Because you can't tax your way out of this problem. That's why jobs are the number one, should be the number one. As Democrats, the idea that we have let this issue be ceded to the Republicans drives me insane. And I just love some of my Democrats say, we need to be pro. And then they start taking shots at every business person. I'm thinking, how can you be pro-job and anti-business? Where do you come from? How can you possibly be pro-job and anti-business? We have to be the jobs party because I want universal health care for the 4 million people that won't get it after Obamacare is implemented in California. Don't forget that. That hasn't solved the problem out here. I want universal preschool because that's a way of getting serious about the achievement gap for African Americans and Latinos, which continues to grow. I'm serious about after-school programs because I've seen what they've done in my little city. And the only way to fund those things is to grow our jobs base and grow our economy. Deal with the Band-Aid and the bridge, which is what the governor's trying to do with this current budget, which is why I support it, to get us temporarily over the edge. Try to be more competitive on the tax structure and the corporate income side particularly. Build some incentives. Get rid of some of those that are just being abused in our waste. And structurally reform this state. The reason we don't reform this state is that people that are the beneficiaries of the status quo don't want to be in that future business of reform, and they're fighting like hell on both sides of the political aisle up in Sacramento to fight these reforms, and you've got to fundamentally look at those reforms. And then look at the vehicle license fee. This is one of the great colossal debacles of all times. You guys got the greatest giveaway of all times, and you know what's hurt? Higher education's been crushed. Crushed because of that. Arnold Schwarzenegger deserves a tremendous amount of credit for following through on a campaign promise, but shame on him. One of the worst moves substantively in this state in the last century was rolling back the vehicle license fee because all of us now are addicted to the lower fee. And that has cost this state over $40+ billion. And not many of us were complaining about it. With all due respect, most of you didn't notice it. It's a big check every year, but you had come to expect to pay it. And now we're paying the price for that. So I want to be more specific at the end there on something I think we need to reconcile. Okay. They're arguing for an extension of a modest increase in the current tax debate in Sacramento, but I think it should go back to where it was during my grandfather's time, my father's time, and where I was paying it up to 4 years ago.
So I want to give you guys a chance to ask some questions. I think we got some mics somewhere. But last question before we get to the audience, we got to talk about clean tech, because you've been a big supporter of clean tech since your mayoral days. California has been the heartland of clean tech in many ways, clean tech innovation, but we seem to be losing some of it. We lost some to Texas. We're losing a lot to China.
Yeah.
What do you see as the sort of California strategy for continuing as the leader in clean tech?
In 1998, Democrats joined Republicans in rejecting unanimously joining Kyoto. As a good Democrat, I fail often to mention that it was Democrats that joined Republicans, because it was so easy to blame the Bush administration for pulling away from Kyoto. It happened under the Clinton administration that they were negotiating it. They sent Al Gore out to Japan, and by the time he got back, Bill Clinton loves to say this was the first bill that was rejected before it was ever introduced. People did not think we can grow our economy and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Fast forward not that many years later. It wasn't 1948, not 1968. It was a few years back. And here we are with landmark environmental bill called AB 32, the specific answer to your question. And all it does is to call to roll back greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. Big deal. Well, apparently it was, because Valero and Tesoro and a lot of these oil companies tried to recall, or not, well, ultimately to take that away, and last year put an initiative on the ballot, Prop 23. Luckily, we rejected it because they thought it was too onerous. Here's some interesting facts, just very briefly. Which countries actually joined Kyoto? Because I think you have to be open argument, interested in evidence. You're business folks, so you understand this. Ideology, you'll never govern from an ideological perch. You've got to be open argument. So what are the facts? There were 44 wealthy nations that joined Kyoto when the United States pulled away. Wealthy nations, 170 plus total, but 44 wealthy nations. 4 we know will reach Kyoto, which does this. Roughly calls to roll back greenhouse gas emissions about 7% below 1990 levels by next year, 2012. So Kyoto goes a lot further than our own landmark bill that everyone's saying is the end of the world as we know it. And that's literally what Tesoro and Valero were saying. What are those 4 countries? Denmark, Sweden, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Interesting, before Lehman Day, September 15th, I call it Lehman Day, September 15th, 2008, when the macroeconomics of the world, the wheels came out from underneath us, those 4 countries had higher growth rates than the United States of America, had lower unemployment than the United States of America, and as a Democrat, to me, as a Democrat, large D and small d, the biggest risk to our democracy, I think, is the growing income inequality. They had lower income inequality than the United States of America because of the number of businesses spawned, because they dramatically shift their economy in terms of the way they produced and consumed energy. I just think that's an interesting fact. They will reach Kyoto as they've grown. By the way, Germany's manufacturing now up to 20% of GDP. Mm-hmm. Germany doesn't have Silicon Valley, they have Solar Valley. Germany, I grew up in high school, I'll never forget. Germany was acid rain. Germany were black forests, those lakes where no fish can breathe, and rivers. And they have turned that around because of their feed-in tariffs and because of their 2000 landmark bill on renewables, setting the price signals. And again, dramatically changing their economy in terms of the production and consumption of energy. So this is our godsend, AB 32. What a gift to Silicon Valley. What a gift to this state and this nation. Look at it purely from a jobs perspective. Just say, you know, I'm sick of these Democrats talking about global climate change. It's all a hoax. Fine, I'll accept your argument. I think you're nuts, but hope you're right and I'm wrong. I'm serious. I hope I'm wrong. But let's argue purely from a jobs perspective. You put $1 billion into a coal plant, because some people still think coal, that's the way to go. Clean coal, whatever that is. You put $1 billion, and some of you are trying to figure out the opportunities there. God bless you. Mm-hmm. Cleaner coal is what we should say. But you put $1 billion into coal, you generate, this is the Earth Institute study, so this is not my words, these are 2008 numbers. Put $1 billion into a coal plant, you generate about 890 jobs. Not bad. You put $1 billion into nuclear, which was all the rage up until a few months ago for obvious reasons. You'd create about 1,000 to 1,500 jobs, the highest end 1,500 jobs for every $1 billion you invest. You put $1 billion into solar, something some of you may know a lot about, Silicon Valley knows a lot about. You generate about 1,900 jobs. You put it into wind, 3,300 jobs. But here's the game changer, and it's something that doesn't get the attention it deserves. If we put it into retrofitting buildings, that same $1 billion generates just shy of 7,000 jobs. Now, here's a state before Title 24, our landmark energy efficiency act, that has 13 million residential homes that were built before Title 24 that are just sitting there begging for the opportunity to be completely greened and retrofitted. You've got building and constructions trades that have unemployment north of 40, 50%, depending on the trades in this state, that are prepared and ready to go if we set the price signals and we start releasing the hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars that's sitting on the sideline. Money is not our problem. The problem is ideas. You have no problem raising money unless you have a lousy idea, right? Our problem in Sacramento and in this country is we have no new ideas. And we're sitting there using money as our excuse. There is plenty of money sitting on the sidelines if we send the signals and create some certainty and expectation. And we get back, again, with some intention in starting to reconcile these issues. So I am a fanatic when it comes to green jobs because I'm for job growth. I'm a fanatic for the environment because I believe in this. And so here we are in California, final points, where you look at the unemployment, you look at the job growth the last 2.5 years, it's grown 3 times in the green tech space versus overall job creation, 56% since 1995 through 2006 versus 18% overall. This is the great, I mean, it may be small numbers. My Republicans say it's de minimis. So why are you wasting your time? It's only a small percentage economy. But the growth rate is exponential. The venture capital and the startups, it's all about that spirit of entrepreneurship. So green tech is going to be a huge part because we've got to implement AB 32, a huge part of our plan, a huge part of our focus, and I'm grateful of all the innovators that are here doing the real work.
So just on the building retrofit, though, I mean, shame on us in the private sector that for some reason the private sector is not driving that aggressively. Do you see any public-private partnership that's going to drive? I mean, it's a huge, huge opportunity, but it's very, very spread out, right? And is there is there anything that you're talking about that you see cooking?
There are great programs all across the country, all across the state, and it's just a question of scaling them. It's a question of organizing them. And the real question then comes down to leadership. There are 100 more energy efficient countries than the United States. I mean, you go to Europe, and obviously you put your key into the little card key in the hotel, and you go, where the heck the lights? And they don't work. You got to put the damn car key in the light thing, or there's motion sensors. I mean, here we're still using this thing called a switch. It's like a remote control. Before remote control, you had to go up or dialing a telephone. I mean, a switch for all. I mean, what the hell is that? I mean, the technology's there, the know-how's there. Again, it's the political leadership to set the price signals and to organize around this in a more aggressive way. We've got it, by comparative standards, California does better than anybody else. And our economy would be much worse if we had not dramatically focused on energy efficiency in the last 30 years. There's no doubt about that. But think about where we can be and think about the opportunities that still exist. And so it's, again, leadership. CPUC plays a huge role. We've got great strategies at PG&E and Southern Colleges and all these others, but we've got to get it to the next level. Again, leadership.
I'm sorry I've been dominating this. Do we have a burning question here in the audience? Mark, you have a burning question?
Frozen a little bit, where people, they're not spending because they're waiting to see, because Governor Brown wants to take that money back into Sacramento.
Yeah.
What's the latest status on that? And when do you think that money might go back into local communities, or is it going to be gone and Sacramento's going to take it?
It's a big part of the budget negotiation. And by the way, the budget negotiation should take front and center stage after the new districts maps come out, or at least the first drafts of redistricting this Friday. Just a couple of points. June 15th is the deadline to actually have a budget in your state. If the legislature cannot get a budget done by June 15th, then it doesn't get paid. I think that's great. It's true, and you should as well, because end of tyranny or tyranny without end. And it takes two sides to tangle. It's just too cheap and easy to say it's the Republicans. Republicans want a little bit more on pension. They want a little bit more on spending cap. They want a little regulatory relief. Just how the heck we get there. If they get that, they'll agree to some temporary opportunity for you to decide your fate and future by supporting and extending taxes or not. That's up to you. And then you'll have to look in the mirror and decide, was I responsible or was it the legislature responsible and the governor for the decline in higher education K through 12 in the state? Because you'll have the facts and you'll have to make a decision whether or not it's worth showing up to the polls, which only, by the way, 12% of people in LA decided to do 2 months ago. 88% of people stayed home on their 7 city council races and their 10 ballot initiatives because there's just better things to do. Wow. Or not. One of the discussions around redevelopment, there's about a one, by the way, we exaggerate. The numbers are not 1.4 to 1.7. They're in the hundreds of millions, but nonetheless, redevelopment, there's good redevelopment agencies and there are disastrous redevelopment agencies. I'd like to think San Francisco's a good one. No one's given me evidence to say we weren't. But there have been a lot of studies of other places that say they were lousy, and I think you have to be open argument. The question in the debate is whether we get rid of them or we amend them with some version of a successor agency. And you're probably 9 of 10 of you looking, what the hell is redevelopment? This is really boring. It's just a way of capturing tax increments. So someone comes in and they add value. That added value stays within a designated area so you can add more value and create a cluster effect and improve your living room by not spending money in the kitchen until the living room's perfect, and then you spend money in the kitchen until that's perfect. As opposed to money getting sort of lost everywhere, it's refocused on a certain area. It's an economic development tool for underserved areas, and it's been a great success in cities like San Francisco. You wouldn't have Moscone, you wouldn't have the Transbay Terminal, you wouldn't have Treasure Island, you wouldn't have anything around Candlestick where the old 49ers used to play. That was kind of a shot at me. And so it's part of the debate. I'm a bigger fan of them than I think some others up there, and I'm trying to be a team player, but I'm concerned that they're just going to throw the whole damn thing out. I don't think that will happen. There'll be some compromise.
Well, I am unfortunately, I'm getting the sign. I can't go any longer.
It's lunchtime.
Yeah, right. Right. So I apologize. We can't spend more time with you. I apologize to them, not to you. But I'd like you all to join me in thanking Lieutenant.
Thank you, everyone.
Gavin
Thanks
Newsom
for listening.
joining us.
I appreciate it. With you. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.